Good morning, everyone. Room quiet today. My name is Nikki Agustin, and let me be the first to welcome you to the launch of Belize's first investment summit under the theme Belize Open for Business. We'll get right into things, and so we'll start by asking if you guys can please stand for the national anthem and remain standing for the national prayer that will be read by Mrs. Fiona Coleman Espejo.
Despots must flee this tranquil haven of democracy. The blood of our sires which hollowed the sun brought freedom from slavery, oppression's run. By the might of truth and the grace of God, no longer shall we be heroes of wood. Arise, ye sons of the Baymen's clan. Put on your armor, clear the land, drive back the tyrants, let despots flee. Land of the free, by the Caribbean Sea. Nature has blessed thee with wealth untold, o'er mountains and valleys where prairies roll. Our fathers, the Baymen, valiant and bold, drove back the invaders, this heritage hold. From proud Rio Hondo to old Sassoon, through Coral Isles over Blue Lagoon, keep watch with the angels, the stars and moon, for freedom comes tomorrow's noon. Arise, ye sons of the Baymen's clan, put on your armor, clear the land, drive back the tyrants, let despots flee. Land of the free, by the Caribbean Sea.
Good morning, everyone. Kindly bow your heads in prayer. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let your light of your divine wisdom direct their plans and endeavors, so that with your help we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in union and in peace with the world, which the world itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to the eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Welcome to Minister Honorable Christopher Koyi, Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investments. Welcome to our CEO in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investment, Narda Garcia. Welcome to the Executive Director of Beltrade, Dr. Leroy Almendares. To Ishmael Creos, the Executive Director of the Economic Development Council, I say welcome. Welcome to Mr. Lincoln Blake, the Director in the Investment Policy and Compliance Unit. These are the members of our head table. Welcome also to our members of the business community and the Belize Business Bureau. Mr. Lizaraga, I'm looking at you. Welcome to our media friends and to all our other guests tuning in here at home and abroad. This upcoming summit is definitely a significant and momentous step taken by the government of Belize to spur investments and stimulate economic activity within the country. So it's one of the first that we're preparing to see now, and I won't go too much into that because I'd like to invite the CEO to give us the official welcome remarks. CEO.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Christopher Koyi, Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investment, Dr. Leroy Almendares, Executive Director of Beltrade, Mr. Ishmael Quiros, Executive Director of the Economic Development Council, Mr. Lincoln Blake, Director of the Investment Policy and Compliance Unit, members and staff of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Investments, and Beltrade, our friends in the media, and especially to our fellow Belizean community tuning in at home and abroad. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the official launch of the upcoming, first of its kind, Belize Investment Summit under the theme, Belize Open for Business. The summit is an initiative of Prime Minister John Briceño as the Minister of Investment, as a stimulus to economic growth and recovery. The summit is one of the boldest and swiftest moves that this government has made to help spur local and foreign direct investments, which can be the impetus to accelerated economic recovery. Recovery will not be realized by the summit, but what materializes of it in the form of increased investment that should generate even greater economic activity. We are faced with a pandemic, but with the increased availability of vaccines, it is our hope that the marginal health gains will allow us to take even bolder steps to greater economic prosperity. We have come to realize that the only way to grow our economy is if we take on the task of nation building as a people, working together through strong policy changes, simplified procedures, and a strong emphasis on digitization that will make doing business much easier. These initiatives should aim to position Belize as a prime destination for doing business, and therefore the summit is pivotal to our efforts to let the world know that Belize is open for business. The objective is not only to reach out to the countries that we have existing beneficial relationships with, but also to those who have shied away from our country because of the numerous red tapes that have caused considerable frustration. We have reprioritized our industries to make our country more attractive and will provide a space for companies across the country to find investors, whether as a new investment, joint venture, or merger, to increase our competitiveness in the global arena. Through the summit, we will offer strategic industry insights, expert discussions, and opportunities for all our investors. We will minimize the bureaucracy that usually discourages others from coming to Belize and choosing our country to invest. We will provide an opportunity for the strengthening of bilateral relationships by reassuring countries that we are open and, more importantly, we are ready for business. We will earn the confidence of not only investors, but also our local micro, small, and medium enterprises, that they can reap the benefits of an expanding and growing economy. We will share why Belize's location, people, land, and infrastructure make it an ideal destination for leisure and business. And most importantly, we will endeavor to do our best to ensure that there is an increase in foreign direct investment in the priority sectors that will generate positive socio-economic impact, benefiting all Belizeans. Taking these strategic initiatives to rebuild our economy is a key component of this administration's commitment to finding new and innovative ways to help build a strong and resilient economy. We are ignited by an intensity to provide equal opportunities and open doors for all who want to deepen our trade and investment relationships so that our communities can thrive. We are thankful that our Prime Minister, John Briceño, made it a priority to address one of the key issues that have been holding back us for decades: investments. It comes at a time when the COVID-19 pandemic continues to pose a great challenge for global economies. Therefore, for Belize to become more competitive, it is important that this proactive approach was made to make our country more attractive, not only to foreign direct investment, but to also increase local investments. We are also grateful for all the local companies who have expressed interest in participating in the summit. We recognize that for an economy to be successful, it must include the participation of all. Thank you for taking this step with us. In closing, I wish to send a message to all our local and foreign investors. Choose Belize. Join us at the first Belize Investment Summit on November 3rd and 4th in San Pedro. This country has so much to offer, and we are open for business. Welcome again, and thank you.
Thank you very much for those remarks, CEO Garcia. I think you're right. People should choose Belize. If there is ever a question in terms of why Belize, this summit offers an excellent opportunity for investors to come in and learn about the wealth of opportunities that this country offers, whether it's in agriculture, in tourism, in the new growth economy, blue economy, anything like that. We continue on with the agenda, and I know a question for most people is, okay, what is the summit about? And I'd like to share a little bit about that through the Minister, Honorable Christopher Koye, who will give us some remarks on the overview of the summit. Minister?
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. I would like to speak to a little bit about how do we develop policies, how do we develop our vision. Last year, when we were in the throes of this health crisis and economic recession, if not depression, we have consultations before and after change of administration. We have consultations with stakeholders in our economy, business persons, unions, etc. And in some of those conversations, and at least in one particular conversation I had, looking at the challenges that we are facing, unprecedented contraction in our economy. I think 14%, the debt to GDP as it then was over 130%, the unemployment rate nearing 30%. What can we do to turn this around? A fundamental question, what will enable us to cause a rebound and even a transformation of our economy? So in one of those conversations, with a long-time investor in Belize, what fundamentally he said was, you just have to explain, you just have to demonstrate that Belize is now open for business. That's the absolute start, but that's a key start. We can't have a system of bureaucracy where the likely response is a no rather than a yes. We have to look at how we foster, how we facilitate activity, economic activity. And to do that, we have to first show that, yes, Belize is open for business. So I thought that was a theme that rang well for what we need to do. What we need to do as a new administration. We have to show that we are open for business. It's important on every level. When we talk about some of those fundamental statistics, like the unemployment rate, how do we address unemployment? We have to find and create jobs. How do we create jobs? We have to stimulate and generate economic activity. Who does that? Is it government-led or is it private sector-led? In our view, it is the private sector that plays that key role, that economic engine that we need to be fully oiled and ready to activate. So recognizing where we were, as I mentioned, the challenges that we inherited, we had to act. And as a new administration, what that meant was to address some of those major issues as quickly as possible. So for example, the wave that was then in place, that had to be quickly addressed. But looking at the debt and looking at our fiscal position, we also had to quickly take measures, tough decisions, tough measures, but to bring our fiscal house in order, those are the measures that we had to take. The statistics are already bearing the fruits of those efforts out. As last year, I mentioned that we contracted roughly 14% for the entirety of the year. In the first quarter, we did still contract. We contracted by a little over 8% in that first quarter. But that showed the reduction, a substantial reduction in contraction. That showed that we were turning in the opposite direction, rather from contraction, more towards growth. That second quarter of this year now reflects what the trajectory for Belize is. And that is one of growth, one of exceptional growth. And I believe the Statistical Institute of Belize will be coming out with the numbers on the second quarter next week. But certainly on a preliminary basis, we are pleased to say that in that second quarter, led by agriculture and not far behind by tourism, we have been able to experience an economic growth of over 20%, more specifically around 22%. So our turnaround has been rapid. We as an economy are roaring back. The first 6 months of this year now, we have grown over 6%. Now the IMF, in our conversations, in their staff report, in their projections, projected less than 2% growth for the Belizean economy for 2021. We're already triple that amount. So for all the talk about whether we should have any standby arrangement with the IMF, I think what the experience is that our homegrown effort far outpaces what is the discussion and the projections that the IMF had. So I think we are clearly on the right track. But it's not limited to just statistics. It's about that vision, the vision for not only a rebound, an economic rebound, but an economic transformation. So while we can speak proudly about those results, we have to still look forward because there's a long way to go. And Belize has the opportunity, or Belize is the opportunity for investment. Belize is the opportunity for development. Belize is the opportunity for our people to have a better future. So that, I think, is what is the context of this investment summit. Not about rebound, but about transformation. The efforts that we have been putting in place over the past several months speak to that. The clamor of the business community, local and international, has been, it's difficult to do business in Belize. Again, the numbers speak to that. When we look at the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, we are in the very bottom, I think roughly 130 out of 190 countries, and we have been falling, descending in that ranking consistently over the past decade. We intend to turn that around, and to turn that around drastically. And it is in that regard that, as far as ease of doing business, we are focusing on specific areas to enable the conduct of business, to enhance the conduct of business in Belize. Some of those areas include trade license reform. I believe that was just recently approved, and that has the support of the business sector. Stamp duty reform, exchange control reform, and lands reform. We are at present looking at modernizing the company's registry and our company's law. Starting a business in Belize can take us, on average, roughly 6 weeks. And the cost of starting a business in Belize is almost prohibitively expensive when we talk about setting up a company. I think it is in the legislative process right now for the reduction of fees in starting a company. And we already have our draft company's law, a work in progress, yes, but I expect in the next couple of months that will be completed. That is a law that will support not only the domestic sector, but the international financial services sector as well, as we look to develop a niche market for that hitherto struggling sector. So the efforts are broad, the efforts are extensive. So this investment summit that is being launched here today plays a critical role in that. Between now and then, there is a lot more that will be done. One of which includes the Prime Minister's visit to Mexico, I believe, next month. As you may recall, the Prime Minister recently had a state visit with Guatemala, and then next month, now with Mexico. That represents, in a sense, a pivot that recognizes where we are. Geographically, where are we? We're in Central America. We have markets right around us that we have not fully tapped for trade or for inward investment. It is now high time that we look to these markets and we engage to ensure that we attract investment and we build trade. So I think that this is part of that vision of our Prime Minister. And the investment summit certainly fits in exactly with that vision. So rather than speak about what what the summit will be about, I just wanted to give you that context about why we are having this summit, a first for Belize, and what we expect. As we look to that summit, it is not only the summit itself and the activities of the summit itself that we we speak to, but also the simple fact of showing that we want investment. We look forward to more investment in Belize. So the summit, yes, will speak to all the efforts that we have and that we are open for business and that Belize is the place to do business, but it also offers that opportunity to show as a new administration and as a country what we are about. So I wanted to just make these few comments and thank you very much once again for being here today.
Thank you very much, Minister Koyi. As you rightly expressed, the efforts, I want to make sure I didn't get your words wrong, but the efforts are not about rebound, but about transformation. And that is indeed true. And the key thing about transformation is that it has to start somewhere. And it's not starting with the summit, but it's starting with the numerous policy changes that the government are currently making ahead of that summit. And I know that Minister did not go too much into what the summit is about, but it's going to be held over the course of 2 days in San Pedro. And it will feature key, prominent discussions from local and international speakers. It will also have dignitaries, policymakers, and industry experts. Now, I want to share something with you guys that we have been working on to prepare for the summit itself. So if you notice on the agenda, what we'd like to do is officially launch the video that we'll be starting to use to market our country locally and internationally. So if you turn to the screen, we'll be sharing that with you.
Welcome to Belize, an investment jewel perfectly placed in Central America and the Caribbean. This is a land of opportunity like no other. We are open for business. Geographical ties to North and South America offer investors access to a variety of international markets, multilateral and bilateral free trade agreements, investment treaties, and economic partnership and cooperation agreements with Europe, Mexico, the Caribbean, the United States, Asia, and the United Arab Emirates make Belize an investment hotspot. Over 1.9 million acres of high-yield arable land are prime for agribusiness investments. Sugar, citrus, bananas, grains, spices, cocoa beans, cotton, soursop, turmeric, and other organic crops. Your investments will grow and flourish here. Dive into our fishing and aquaculture industry with high-demand products such as conch, lobster, and shrimp. Our crystalline rich waters are also perfect for alternative food sources in our blue economy like seaweed and sea cucumbers. Endless opportunities in tourism. Belize offers incomparable investment potential in ecotourism, adventure, and cultural tourism, luxury boutique hotels, beachfront resorts, cruise and nautical tourism, and medical tourism. Invest in our information technology outsourcing and knowledge process outsourcing industries. Belize offers a cultural mix with English as the primary language and a bilingual population. The country's outsourcing sector is mature and competent with over 80% industry growth, exporting these services to North America, Europe, Australia, and Asia. Explore these opportunities and many others as you network with local and foreign investors and government officials at the Belize Investment Summit 2021, coming soon. We welcome you to Belize, open for business.
So of course, that's just the start to everything that we want to do ahead of this summit. You can also find us on Facebook at Belize Investment Summit 2021. Our website is investmentsummit.bz. So using these different platforms, we'll have answers to your questions. We'll let you know about any upcoming announcements and the registration process. So I know that there may be a lot of questions that you guys may have. This is just one of the introductions. We have until November to get everything prepared for the summit. However, we are here today to also invite questions from our media and friends. So if you guys have any questions, our panel is here to confidently respond to those questions. So if you have questions, we do have a mic in the middle that you can, or sorry, at the end that you can go to, and you can come up to that mic and ask your questions. For the purpose of today, we'd like to limit at least 2 questions. If we have time, then we go back and capture any questions that you may have. Please just state your name and what media house you're from, and we're ready for your questions.
Good morning to the table. Daniel Ortiz from Channel 7 News. Minister Koyi, I listened to your presentation and discussed some of the key points that you heard made about the ability to do business here in Belize and for those businesses to prosper. Can you provide us with other pain points that you guys intend to address to try to make Belize a more competitive environment?
Yes, sure. Hello? Can you hear me?
Oops.
Okay. I think that, as you might have seen in the Plan Belize manifesto, there are a host of different things that the administration has committed to. With respect to ease of doing business, I highlighted a few, but overall it is about simplifying processes, looking at the bureaucracy that we have, the public service and the bureaucracy in trying to get things done overall. One of the commitments certainly is in the area of discretion and the exercise of discretion, and how do we look at starting to minimize that. That's a monumental task. That means every ministry we have to look at probably legislative action, extensive legislative action. So that's one of those that can't happen overnight, but that's one of those key areas that will help to simplify the conduct of business in Belize, simplifying processes in Belize. When I spoke about the exchange control reform as an example, it's coming from private practice. It's really something that's simple and can be addressed rather quickly. Exchange control is about exactly what it says. But if you are looking at foreign direct investment and you're a fixed exchange rate system, why do you have restrictions on inflow? We could talk about outflow, but why have restrictions on inflow? So as simple as that, that makes a big difference for foreign investment. For local investment, it's all the bureaucracies on a whole. So, I mean, I can go on, but just to highlight a little bit of things that are being done and things that will be done.
Okay.
I would ask Mr. Blake to talk about the policy reforms we're looking at and the revision of processes and procedures to make the ease of doing business much better.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Minister. Yeah, first of all, we're looking at several procedural, structural, and policy that currently is in place, and how it affects some of the private sector and the investors that come in and want to engage in not only new startups but in reinvestment. So there will be several initiatives. Some are short term, some are medium, some are long term. The short term right now that we're looking at, for example, is how do we treat investors when they come in, and looking at how they apply. For example, if they apply for an incentive, or maybe they want a change in a specific legal document like a land document, or a company change in shareholders in a company. We're looking at all of these procedures and see exactly what it is that could be addressed immediately, and focusing on those for right now, and also looking at what could be done in the medium term and the long term, because we do recognize that there are structural issues that we need to deal with so as to improve the to-do business index, which does affect us in attracting new investment. So currently, we're looking, for example, at both internally. We're starting with ourselves at the ministry and Beltrade, where we'll look at our procedures, our protocols, and how do we engage investors? How do we treat investors? How long do we take to process an application? All of that is with the objective to reduce the time and also to ensure that that investment could be implemented as quickly as possible. So in a nutshell, we divided the work in 3 phases: short term, medium term, long term. We're dealing with the short term right now, but by the time we get to the investment summit, we should have significant amount of initiatives and interventions and changes, not only in procedures and policy, but also in law, to ensure that those investors feel a lot more comfortable, and also that make sure that we give an indication that Belize really is open for business.
If I may also compliment Ishmael Quiros, Economic Development Council. Another key commitment of the new administration is to vigorously and actively support digital transformation of the economy. And the cabinet has run with a suite of new digital laws and has enthusiastically supported the passage of those. And so that has been in preparation. It will contribute significantly to the rollout of e-governance initiatives, as well as e-commerce uptake. And so it relates to the bureaucracy, but also the reality of government departments and ministries not communicating with each other or sharing information. And so this suite of new digital laws will also enable that. It's something that the government is very much seeking to promote, to address some key pain points as well. Thank you.
Up to your response here, Mr. Quiros, can you give us a timeline as to when we will see a serious rollout of e-governance? We've been hearing this idea touted for at least 2 to 3 years now. When can we start to maybe apply for a driver's license online, pay for your land tax, stuff like that?
There's already the beginnings of that. For example, at the company's registry, there's email services being provided. That's just very nascent and initial step. But the idea is to provide full online services within the next 6 months to a year or so. The passage of the laws will enable the legal coverage for uptake. The establishment of a Ministry of E-Governance is an indication of the government's seriousness to promote this. And we know that they are working in the background, conducting process mapping and identification of needs, both technology-wise, but also capacity-wise. And so there's a lot of work happening in the background to really advance, especially short-term efforts at digital access now. So it's in the works.
Madam Mistress, I'm hoping you'll indulge me on a quick bonus question. For any member of the panel, can you tell us how you all will measure the success of this investment summit to present to the Belizean public, look, this is what our investment climate looked before we started taking these actions, and this is what it looks like now.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the question. I think it's important for us to, because as you mentioned when we talk about investment, one of the things that we have to focus on in these is the crowding out of investment. So the challenges that have been mentioned before. But one of the serious policy measures, just adding to those that are already being looked at, is the national investment policy and strategy. Because what existed before were fragmented pieces of policies, and so therefore it created the same deficiencies and the frustration. As a matter of fact, frustration index was increased. And so this policy, looking at situationally, what are the present challenges, etc., we're benchmarking ourselves against similar entities. This policy will also look at addressing some of the very challenges we face with doing, ease of doing business. Because as the minister mentioned this morning, we're about 139. And this does not make us very attractive. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. This policy also has an accompanying strategy, because it's also about engaging and getting, and it's right now at this present time, getting feedback from the private sector, because investment has to be private sector driven. This helps to create the enabling environment. So this is just not an additional, but bringing to fore all of the different challenges that we have had. It's expected, of course, because the ones who will be administering capacity building, there will be broad-based consultation or communication with the media, and there will be a rollout plan, again, the continuous involvement. This is still evolving. And as Mr. Blake mentioned, some of these things won't materialize before November 2nd and 3rd. So this is one of those measures as well that is being put in place and tied with the legislative changes, because just this morning, for example, I was in a conversation where a person said, but I've been trying to take investors to Belize for some time, and all they do is to drag their feet. And we must understand, we must make ourselves competitive, because in the environment that we exist, if we crowd out investment, they're going to go somewhere else and never come back. And so it's important to make ourselves more attractive. That's what we're working on. All of these things that are being addressed should make us not only open, more attractive, ready to welcome. And I can tell you that there is an existing team that is focusing on all of these different measures and working as hard as we possibly can to make sure that this happens. So that's just not only an additional, but additional information to let you know that in fact, that's a specific policy that is being put in place as well.
I just wanted to add that from a practical standpoint, for example, we met a list of fiscal incentive applications at Beltrade. These go through Beltrade, recommended to the investment unit, and up to cabinet when it's warranted and approved. These are local and international companies seeking fiscal incentives of the 10, I believe, 8 are for tourism. These have been lingering for months, maybe a year or more, and I think that is unacceptable, and we are moving those. We need the investment, and we need the employment to be generated. So from a practical standpoint, we are processing them ASAP with urgency.
Mr. Ortiz. Anyone else?
Good morning. Marian Ali from News 5. My question is for anyone, but Minister, while I believe that you will have many investors being appreciative of this effort to create the ease on the bureaucratic process that you speak of or that you spoke of, I think also appreciative of this effort will be investors who are engaged in illicit or illegal activities. And my mind goes to money launderers, people engaged in all types of illegalities. So my question is, how do you, in your quest to open up to everyone, balance between the legitimate, how do you weed out or screen so that Belize does not attract those people who are engaged in those types of illicit activities, and then put our country or create a bad image for us on the global map?
I would just like to make a point regarding that question. Currently, there is an anti-money laundering legislation which all of us have to comply with. All of our applications are also included in that compliance. When an application comes in, or even when there's an engagement between government and a private entity, the due diligence checks on these shareholders, sometimes it's difficult to actually sift through all the network of corporations that exist and shareholder on top of shareholder to actually get to the natural owner of a company, but it's done. It's done. It's a complex issue. It requires specific skills and sometimes coordination with other international authorities, because it's done mostly with international investors. But there is that check through Interpol and also the Financial Intelligence Unit. We all engage with them on a regular basis when we receive applications. In fact, one of the requirements whenever you engage with us is that you must submit your biodata page of your passports, and that is submitted, of course, of the shareholders, and that is submitted to the FIU and Interpol for clearance. So I just wanted to add that before.
I think that the only way to keep out illicit activity, including money laundering entirely, is to completely shut down and have no business whatsoever. If we look at Belize and look at the rest of the world, you have illicit activity, money laundering activity everywhere in the world. The first world countries have the most. You don't see them restricting or trying to stop investment, domestic or foreign investment. But what you do see is the establishment of laws, standards, regulations, and having the enforcement of those laws, standards, and regulations. And I think that is what Belize is doing, where Belize is at. We have international standards in our AML legislation. We have a financial intelligence unit, and we have a decentralized approach, which I think is essential in the monitoring of and identifying of money laundering activities. If you centralize and just have government or central bank, let's say, as being the one authority that is responsible for due diligence and for sifting out whether or not an investor might be engaged in money laundering, you create a bottleneck and you stifle economic activity, you stifle investment, you stifle business. So the approach, which is set out in our laws and in practice is to have, in effect, agents reporting institutions, the banks, the law firms, the accounting firms. They all have responsibilities for AML compliance. So we have policing broadened, and that is that international standard. That is how we look to identify whether illicit activity, money laundering activity is occurring, and those are your eyes, those agents are your eyes and ears, that they have the responsibility to, when they see they have reasonable suspicion, to submit a suspicious transactions report to the FIU, which then in turn is tasked with following through on what illicit activity, if any, is occurring. So that is the structure that we have as a country, and I think that is a structure that we can feel comfortable will work for addressing illicit activity and money laundering. The enforcement side now, as far as FIU, that is where we need to see more action and follow through. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have any other questions?
I have a comment. Congratulations on the 20% growth. I think the government really should be applauded by the efforts there. It's refreshing to know that Free Zone opened the economy and agriculture is leading it because it has a big impact. I'd like to be mischievous today and ask, normally summits have star quality speakers, and it would be useful if we had the Maya Train Ponce director explain what the Maya Train will do at Chetamal, and if it enters Belize, the impact it will have on the economy, because the minister mentioned the pivotal role that Belize is taking with the region. It's difficult to trade with Trinidad and Jamaica because there's a lot of water, but it's a lot easier to trade in Mexico. And I believe sincerely that a full free trade agreement that's not limited partial scope, Mexico wants the full free trade agreement, would have an impact on all Belizeans. It'll lower the cost of living for them, possibly by 30%, because the goods, there's a little bit of industry that we need to protect, and we can do so. But the free trade agreement will allow immense amount of new investment, immense amount of trade, and it will affect lots of things, health, services, not just trade. So I believe that we should be encouraged, or we should pursue in September the meeting with the Prime Minister and the President of Mexico, a full free trade agreement, not just a partial scope that will limit us to a few people trading. That's a waste of time. I'd also like to suggest that maybe we should try to bring President Bukele from Salvador, because his country, even though small, they're about 10 million, they have a lot of manufacturing, and we can joint venture with them to make things here in Belize and export to CARICOM. And since they are smaller, they're not as big as Mexico, they'd be more inclined. Just the other night I saw some Belizeans making shoes, and I thought of Salvador, and a lot of small industries that employ 50, 60 people. And I think that would be a model that we can use. And if the president comes, we can then step up our game and enter into a free trade agreement with him and bring his investment. They already own courts, so it's a natural thing. And lastly, I think Cancun and Tulum are expanding their airports. And if we could have a local flight with Cancun and Tulum, there's a lot of investment going there. We can actually feed off immense amount of tourism. I think we probably could double or triple the visitors overnight that would come to Belize vis-a-vis Mexico. And if we could bring those star quality players to talk about what is happening and how we could integrate, I think that will encourage a lot of local investors to go at the 600 million liquidity that the banks are hoarding and choking the private sector by not releasing that liquidity in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will say that there are some secrets in there that you've been giving away ahead of this summit. But thank you very much for your comments on that. The floor is still open for any other questions that you guys might have, any comments that you want to add before we close off today's session. Matt, I'd like to take it to the head table if there's any final words that they would like to share ahead of the summit, reasons why to attend. We'd like to start with Mr. Blake.
Thanks, Mistress of Ceremony. Yeah, well, I think it's an important opportunity for investors to take advantage of this event, which will basically be a meeting point between not only investors, but also with regulators, with leaders in policy, and also movers and shakers within Belize and within the region. And I think that in the recent visit of the Prime Minister to Guatemala, I think there has been much interest from Guatemala for investments to come from over there, as the CEO had mentioned. And recently we also are engaging in the expansion of the partial scope agreement between Belize and Guatemala, which the investment chapter was a key, which shows you the importance of investment within that agreement. And I think that we also could use this forum to ensure the investors, because we'll also be showcasing not only Belize, but indicating of all the changes that we have made, so as to welcome these new investments and also reinvestments, not only for foreigners, but also for local investors.
I think not only because of the summit, but because of so many factors that have come together, the pandemic included, a new administration, and different investors interested in Belize. It's a very important, it's a very critical, and it's a very exciting time for the country. It's very important that we all see the opportunities in that and use it to really transform. And that is what the summit really seeks to showcase. It seeks to showcase government's commitment to supporting the private sector lead economic growth, because that's who leads economic growth. Government does have a critical role to play, and this summit is an example of one of government's efforts to really bring all of those factors together and channel it, and we all have a role to play, channel it towards transformation. So spread the word, get investors interested, local businesses, look out for opportunities. Belize is open for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Ceremonies. Thank you, Nikki. We want export-led growth. Many times we hear about expanding production, expanding output, expanding export. But the foundation of all of that really is to invest. Because what we want to export and it's not only goods, because we can also export services. Many times we don't focus on services, it's goods and services. Under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and everything as the WTO, there are many ways in which we can do so. So if we expand the pie, if we invest, and we have products that meet what are called rules of origin, we can export those products. We export those products. One of the objectives is to reduce the trade deficit to a point where, as the minister mentioned, in the last quarter, more than likely exports were greater than imports. And if that continues to happen, then it means we'll be reach all of those targets. So if we can do that, invite investors to come in, be partners, join forces. We talk about joint venture with local investors, for example. That's one way of doing it. But we also want to encourage investors locally to be more engaged, because we're not focusing only on foreign investors, but also local investors. So if you join us, be a part of this summit, it will be mutually beneficial, it will be benefiting you, and you'll help us to realize that economic growth and development that we look forward to.
There's a lot that is going on behind the scenes in terms of what will culminate at the summit on the 3rd and 4th of November. There's a lot of technical issues that are being solved by departments and units in government that will allow us to showcase a different Belize, a different investment climate for Belize. I believe that this is a very good opportunity for us to show the world that we can attract investment. We have primer products that have been the greatest growth recently. But what we need is to ensure that we add some value to the primer products that we produce. And by foreign investment, foreign direct investment, and in joint ventures with our Belizean companies, we can do that. So I urge everybody to pay attention to what is happening in the investment climate. The government is committed to ensuring that we promote and that we foster the growth through the inclusion of both local and foreign direct investment.
Thank you. As you can see, there's much that can be said and we can continue to speak of. But I think ultimately what the summit will be about is a networking forum for both local and foreign investors. And so the presentation will be to enable that. When we look at investment, I think one area to highlight that we haven't spoken of before is that the opportunity will not be limited to investment or joint ventures, but the possibility of public-private partnerships as well. I think the Economic Development Council has been working on the development and finalization of a PPP policy that has been supported by the IDB, and I think we are close to completing that now. And it's an area where I think, especially given the realities that government does have its fiscal constraints, that we still look at ways how we can enable investment. And the model of the public-private partnership is certainly one of those that I think can enable major investments in the country. And so through this investment summit, I expect that we could have those types of partnerships spawn from that networking opportunity. So I think I could end it there. Thank you.
Sir, with that, we come to the end of this official launch of the upcoming Belize Investment Summit 2021, Belize Open for Business. Once again, we invite you to follow us on our Facebook page, Belize Investment Summit 2021, for all updates and future announcements. Thank you very much for joining us today.